Welcome to the Big Swing podcast, the home of inspiring, behind-the-scenes business stories from the world's leading content creators. My name's Sam Barcroft, and I started my media company back in 2003 from my bedroom in Tottenham. After 16 years, I sold it, and I settled in for my happy ever after, helping out other entrepreneurs to scale their businesses. Now I've founded Creativille to share my insights with you. So, subscribe to my free newsletter at creativille.co and join me here on the Big Swing podcast as each week I ask a super producer to reveal the 3 most important decisions they've made in their quest for success. And stick around at the end when I'll let you in on my personal top takeaways from today's very special guest. Welcome to the Big Swing. Today's guest, John McKenna, is the co-founder and CEO of the Noah Media Group, and he's a pioneer of premium sports documentaries. John and his team have made some of the biggest sports films of recent times, profiling the likes of Arsene Wenger for Amazon Prime, Jackie Charlton for the BBC, and Bobby Robson for Netflix. Their first feature doc was Steve McQueen, The Man and Le Mans, which got the nod for the official selection of the 2015 Cannes Film Festival, a remarkable achievement for John. And after a succession of brilliant documentaries, John's latest film followed the extraordinary Nirmal Purja as he smashed the world record for climbing the planet's highest 14 mountains in just 7 months, and also saving several climbers' lives along the way. Do check out 14 Peaks, Nothing is Impossible on Netflix. It's a stunning watch, and it was a huge success for the streamer. And behind the scenes of John's award-winning content is Noah Media's unique data-driven approach to financing their work and to keeping control of their destiny. Their fresh take on the film and TV industry is a game changer. And of course, all stories have to start somewhere. And John's story begins at home in St Helens, outside Liverpool. He was a recent history graduate wondering what he was going to do with his life.
My uncle brought an advert around in the old Saturday Guardian, which I've got cut out at home, for a sports runner at London Sports Network. And so I came down for the interview in my only suit on the coach, and then they asked me for a second interview, which I stayed in London at my girlfriend's, and went again in my only suit, same tie, and got the job. £8,000 a year as a runner in London, and it was amazing. Couldn't believe it. I was mad into sport. I rang my dad after the first day and said, he said, "How was it, son?" And I said, "I think this job is watching football for a living, but I'll give you a call tomorrow and confirm."
Where were you based?
So I was on the 19th floor of the TV centre on the South Bank, and overlooking St Paul's Cathedral. And what I didn't realise was that this London Sports Network, this little local. It was like London Tonight Sports Desk. Really, was where I was working, but that department became ITV Sport. So I joined in November '95, and in summer '96 I was the tape librarian for ITV Sport on Euro '96.
Wow,
and so
what
I was
a
working
start.
on my first major tournament. Yeah, it's amazing. And there was a few of us there that had quite similar backgrounds. One of my best mates in TV and media now is a guy called Rob Levi. And he was a couple of years younger than me, from Essex, but a similar background, a working class background, and fell into it. And both of us were like, well, we can't believe we're in here. We're going to just keep our eyes open, our ears open. And the one thing they're not going to kick us out for is for not working hard enough. And so we were first in, we were last out, we were like sponges, and it was like, let's try and find our way through this. And Rob now is, he directed the last the Anthony Joshua fight.
Right.
He directs the biggest boxing fights, Champions League finals and semi-finals. That's where Rob's gone.
And so that whole kind of first moment, the recruitment process must have been super tough to get one of those coveted jobs at ITV Sport, right?
I mean, I keep saying I fell into it, and I really genuinely think like I did. I mean, my uncle brought the ad round. I went down. I'd got a good A-levels, good degree. It was essentially a sports quiz. and I got 11 out of 10. And so I passed the sports quiz.
Do you remember any of the questions?
I remember them asking me who the Luton town manager was at the time. And my girlfriend was from Luton, and it was Terry Westley. And so I got that one right, and they were very, very impressed. I remember going in, I thought, well, do you know what I'll do? Before I go into the interview, I'm going to buy a paper, and I'm going to read the back pages so I know what the stories are today. And they asked me what the papers were covering this morning, and I did that just on a whim on the way in.
And then it's super fortunate, as you say, that kind of that small sports desk for the regional news show actually happened to be the business that got bought out when Granada and ITV merged, and actually became, you know, the centre of kind of commercial sports broadcasting in the UK. Because that just, sometimes I found in my career, being in the right place at the right time can be hugely beneficial.
I mean, I was very lucky in that regard. I mean, I stayed there for 13 years, and when I left, I had the nominal title of creative director, whatever that meant at ITV Sport. But it was great. I was able to then direct live football, live boxing, live rugby, a chance to produce Champions League games with, you know, presenters that everyone's heard of and still working in the business. And I did all of that, which was amazing. But all the way through, I was drawn to the short form storytelling, which became longer form storytelling, and I started to work with a guy one of the co-founders of Noah with me, Gabriel Clark, who's a very well-respected journalist. And, and Gabriel and I started to make 3-minute features for On the Ball for ITV. And they became 5, became 7, and then I got a shot at doing a half-an-hour documentary. So while I was being told to become a director, become a live producer, in my spare time I was trying to get documentaries going, and that's sort of how where I am and where Noah Media is. That was the sort of seeds of it, really. So
while everybody was zigging, you were zagging in a way, is that fair?
Yeah, possibly. I remember, like, one of my former bosses, I remember him sitting in his office for my annual appraisal and telling him I wanted to do this, and him sort of like bemusement, like, why? No one's interested. People only want to watch the live sport. No one's interested in the stuff you make, John. It's lovely. It's pretty pictures, but no one cares. And it was really hard then to get documentaries made, produced, funded. We were making stuff that was BAFTA nominated, but it was getting an 11:30 slot on ITV because the attitude was that no one really cared. And then we had a sort of period of time where they were restructuring. There was voluntary redundancy on the table if you wanted it. And my boss said to me, he said, listen, just do it. Take the money and go and show what you can do. So I went freelance, and I was really enjoying myself.
And so in 2009, after 13 years at ITV, John left the only employer he'd ever had to go freelance. You might think that this was his first big swing, but it isn't. He'd already become a very successful sports director and had smartly lined up his clients for more work, and was quickly signed up by no less than FIFA, UEFA and the Olympics. John could pick and choose his jobs. Life was peachy. And then the biggest new job in live sports comes up.
BT Sport got the Premier League, and I went in for an interview as a director, thinking they're going to offer me a few shifts here and there.
So just to pull you back on that a little bit, John, you're taking your pick of the jobs as a freelance producer and as a director, live sport director as well. And all of a sudden, there you are, BT Sport in front of you, and they offer you this big opportunity, right? How did that feel?
Surprising and conflicting. It wasn't my real drive. My drive was a documentaries, and I was offered the live studio for the Premier League. And it was in terms of directing, it was as big a job as you could be offered. And I remember going home and speaking to my wife and thinking, like, I feel like I've got to take this. I feel like I can't turn this down. It's too big an opportunity. And it was 2 or 3 days a week, so I was still able to try and get documentary and other projects going. So John's first big swing was to pack in a super successful freelance directing career for the top job in UK live sports, helming a brand new broadcaster's coverage of football's Premier League. Hard to see what the stakes are, right? What could possibly go wrong? I took it because I felt like I had to, which was a massive learning curve for me with hindsight. And one of my really good friends was doing the same job for Sky. Other of my friends were the main match directors, and it was almost like I was slotting in at the very top level. And I was like, I can't say no to this. Like, people were congratulating me on being offered the job, you know, people I respected and had known for 15, 20 years were like, oh my God, congratulations. And it felt like, I've got to do this. In that situation, what's the lesson that you took away from that period of time? Well, it didn't go very well for me. at BT. You know, it lasted 3 or 4 months for me, and it was a horrible experience to sort of the way it ended. Which you know has driven me in other ways off the back of it. But I think the biggest lesson for me in it, again with hindsight, I'll forgive me for this quote. Roddy Doyle in our Jack Charlton film described hindsight as being the foresight of the gobshite, which I just thought was an amazing quote, which never made the film, which I literally can't believe. But it was a lesson in really making sure the decision is right for you and not for what you think people think is right for you. And I've been on a path at ITV, like going back to and the reason I got to the creative director role at ITV was in a sport department where everybody either wanted to be a live director or a live producer. No one wanted to do the creative side. And so I found that little niche at ITV that got me on a pathway to work that became really successful. And then in the freelance world, I was building my own path, and I should have stuck at it in hindsight. And it sort of derailed me for 6 months, was pretty horrible.
How did it all come to a head?
I was told that they wanted me to do different shows on the live football, and I sort of said, well, do you know what? To be honest with you, I've not been enjoying this. Let's call it a day. And so I sort of stepped away with encouragement. And I think 2 months later, we were in production with our first feature doc, Steve McQueen and the Man of Le Mans. So it wasn't long until I was actually doing what I'd always dreamt of been doing, which is making documentary films.
John co-directed his first feature film with his creative partner from ITV, Gabriel Clark. Steve McQueen, the Man in Le Mans, had exclusive access to unseen, behind-the-scenes footage of Steve McQueen's production of his passion project, a movie set at the 24-hour car race at Le Mans. John's documentary is all about the drive to follow your dream despite what others are saying. In Steve McQueen's case, it proved to be a disaster. His movie cost over $42 million to produce in today's money and was a box office flop. But for John, the prospects couldn't be brighter. His first documentary movie was selected for competition at the Cannes Film Festival, the world's most prestigious showcase.
It was amazing and a massive vindication for what I'd felt the levels that we were delivering were. But you don't know if you've got your internal biases there. But yeah, it was absolutely sensational. I mean, there's only 2 British films selected for Cannes in 2015.
Right. They
both happened to be documentaries. One was Emmy, which everyone on the planet has seen, and one was Steve McQueen, the Man in Le Mans, which not quite everyone on the planet has seen. So I'm really proud of the film, and I think, you know, for a first film, I think we did a really, really good job with it. It played to a packed theatre, standing ovation. It was amazing.
But way before that standing ovation, John had been offered a prescient warning. Still buzzing from the news that his film had been selected for Cannes, the chairman of Molinaire, the storied post-production house where John was finishing off his documentary, offered this sage advice.
And he said, well done, John, you've climbed the first of 3 mountains. And I was like, what? He said, now you've got mountain 2, you've got to get it out there, and mountain 3, you've got to try and get your money back. And I was like, no, it can't be that hard, can it? And it was. Sure
enough, mountains 2 and 3 proved to be tough climbs.
And so the film had got to Cannes. We were really excited about what would happen in the distribution and sales journey, and it was really rather disappointing. And we felt like people weren't aligned with us. There wasn't, you've spent however many years trying to get this going before production. You know, I was working on it for a couple of years at least before that green light moment, at least. And then you make it, and it gets this opportunity, and it just felt like those that then take on the film aren't as invested, aren't aligned with you, don't have the same, let's try this, let's try that. And a few things happened that really weren't great.
I've had that experience a number of times, and that feeling.
It's extraordinary. I couldn't believe how producers were treated in this world, having given birth to the product, and then you hand it across and you're treated like second-class citizens in conversations.
Steve McQueen would have known just how John felt. His racing car movie was a really big swing, even for a global superstar, and McQueen also made his film because he wanted to take control of his own work too. Ironically, John now found himself in McQueen's shoes. His first ever feature doc had been acclaimed by the critics, but its commercial potential had been squandered, and John found himself without any power to influence a better commercial outcome. So, for his second big swing, John vowed never to be in that position again, and he made two decisions: to set up his own production company, Noah Media, and also to step back from directing.
And so, obviously, Gabriel and I had made the film. Gabriel had co-directed it with me, and I'd produced it. I think Gabriel's absolutely incredible at directing, and I'd come to a self-awareness about how good Gabriel was versus how good I felt I was at the directing. And I thought, well, okay, can I hit his levels? I don't know. I've got this internal, I want to be the best about me. And so, but I thought, right, well, I think I can do a lot around this. So I was quite happy to step to the producing on the film side of stuff, because I loved it, and I definitely can feed in a lot on the directing side. So I thought, I'm quite happy to make that step, having directed that film. But the bigger ticket, the bigger move was the company. And so I'm thinking about setting this business up with Gabriel for a while. And then another of our co-founders is a guy called Barry Smith, who was a co-founder of Skyscanner. And I've known Barry longer than I've not known Barry. I've known him before Skyscanner, and he's a very, very good old friend of mine. And he'd always been interested in what we were doing. He'd been a little bit involved in the McQueen film, and he'd seen what we'd been through. And so I was discussing with him about how, like, literally, we've got to take some charge of this. We can't let this happen again. This is ridiculous. And I think that quite fired at something in Barry about, an industry that, you could say in many ways for the producer isn't optimal.
Sure enough, John's instinct about the opportunity that he'd spotted was soon confirmed.
I went to an early meeting after we'd set up Noah with a big distribution company I won't name. And this lady in the meeting said, "It's amazing. Producers will just give you anything." And I remember just sitting the other side of the table thinking, like, the audacity of this. Like, this was, like, said with glee in the room. And I'm thinking, like, that's not going to be us.
No.
We had an opportunity. Our clients were the biggest global sporting federations in the world. I knew we could deliver films to BAFTA nominated, Cannes selected levels. We had incredible contacts in sport, and so this was the seed of it. And then the conversation I had with Barry, and Barry was like, "Well, okay, I was railing against the industry. I was railing against this and saying we're going to fight for this and do this better. There's got to be a better way." And then I think the challenge of that really sparked something in Barry. And so Barry was like, "Okay, well, listen, there's two ways I can help you. One is I can help you as a mate on the outside, or the second is I can come in and we can do this together."
And what were you weighing up at that point, John? When you're kind of sitting there thinking, do I consolidate this into a company? Did that not keep you awake at night, trying to get that first bit lined up just how you needed it to be?
Yeah, totally.
What did you stand to lose, do you think, at the time?
Well, to be honest with you, at that stage, the biggest thing I was worried about was my friendship with Barry. We'd known each other for 20 years, but outside of that, I was backing us. So there's a reputation thing, obviously. You don't want to look silly again. I felt like I'd looked a bit silly through the BT experience. But there was an ambition. There's an ambition from everybody involved that we could actually do something that's a bit different. I think none of us wanted just to be a production company. I think we were fired by what had happened with the McQueen film, and we were like, well, we want to try and do this differently.
It's fascinating, really, John, because I think one of your biggest worries about setting up a business wasn't, what do I do about getting enough income to pay the bills or anything else. It was actually about being concerned about your friendship, which I think is great. I hope you don't forget that, because that's a really nice way of thinking about it. But like that disruptive focus, for me, it's really interesting because that kind of leads you to your next big swing with 14 Peaks, kind of deciding to follow data and to keep control of the film. 14 Peaks, Nothing is Impossible is the extraordinary story of how an ex-Gurkha and SAS soldier called Nirmal Nims Purja decided to take up climbing and summit the world's tallest 14 mountains, all the ones above 8,000 metres, in just 7 months. The previous record for this was 7 years. Nims wasn't just breaking the record, he wanted to smash it in a truly superhuman effort. And he'd already started his expedition when one of Noah Media's investors introduced him to John.
And Mark Webber, the former F1 driver, is an investor in the business and introduced us to Nims, to Nirmal Purja, who was going out and having conversations with companies to make the film. He wanted a production company to pull his story together. He was about halfway through the expedition at the time. And we went into a competitive process, pulled it together, and ultimately made this amazing visual presentation of what he thought the film would be. And we our pitch in was, listen, we'll do this. We'll fight for this together in partnership with him, and we'll try and make the best decisions about the films and make it real, a commercially successful film as well as a creatively successful film. And so we won the pitch. So we were the producers and the distributors of that.
I mean, from my perspective, looking from the outside, that's basically a ridiculous swing, because you're thinking about how you get a film away that could end up in an absolute tragedy, not just a financial one, but a human one as well. The stakes couldn't really be higher with a project like that, could they?
Yeah, from the outside, I think that I can understand why that might look like the picture, but I think this is where we're trying to bring in a bit more insight into what our decisions. And so at that point in time, it was manual, but we're now trying to build this into a technology that we're using in all our decisions, which is understanding the market and the audience for the film. And so we've got distribution and salespeople with a huge international experience now inside Noah, and they just ran a lot of analytics and comparables, so we had a really good sense of what the appetite for this type of product was in the market. And obviously there've been lots of success with Free Solo, with Maru, with other climbing films like that, so we knew there would be creatively an interest in this. But then also we were able to dig into which territories these really perform well. So we knew what documentaries sold for in those territories. So we had a good sort of backstop of what we thought this film could achieve from a sales point of view. And then we went to market. We did a bit of early testing. So we cut a teaser, and then the plan was to go to market and see if we could start to get some offers, just to see if there was an appetite. And there was immediately. And we got offered the full budget plus a little bit up front. That's the moment where I think, what production company do we want to be? Do we want to be the company that just goes, thank you very much, and take it, and away we go, and we've still got the critical acclaim that the film got? Or do we actually want to remember why we set this up in the first place, which is to try and protect the film and to try and protect those that have given, Nims especially, so much to make this possible. And
so that's your big moment of jeopardy, really, John, isn't it? You're thinking about breaking the golden rule of filmmaking, which is get somebody else to pay for it. So that must have been a brilliant moment to know that the demand was out there. And did that, in a funny way, make taking that big swing a little bit easier?
A little bit, but not a lot. Because you've still got to deliver it. But it allowed us to go, right, okay, so we're going to try and raise this money ourselves and get equity investors and tax credits and everything else that you could piece the film together with, which is what we did. So we went and we did that, and we thought, let's back ourselves here. Then that's where, again, the team that we've got, they were pushing us, let's go and get a sales agent. And we'd been really badly burned with sales agents and others 5 years earlier. We'll do this differently. These are guys who are really good, and they'll work for us, and they won't take rights for 15 years. They won't take any rights. It's all based on the sale, and so we again, that was another early vindication of the film. So before we'd made the decision, we were talking to sales agents, and the biggest agents in the world all wanted to be part of the film. So we thought, right, okay, this is another good indicator here. There was that, you say it can't be easy. It wasn't easy. All those decisions were like, we've got to protect ourselves. So we put as much in as we felt we could without negating the commercial value for those that we felt deserved the commercial value.
Just doesn't quite fit the rule book, does it, that we're all used to. You know, the trick is to get it made, stay on budget, you know, get out alive and hope to get some recognition for it, rather than to look after the people that have put the energy in along the way, and to figure out how you can take a kind of a long-term benefit from the project rather than a kind of survival benefit from it. As an entrepreneur, I know that ideas on paper are often really fun, but it's a really interesting moment when you actually have to put those ideas into practice, because often your interpretation changes as soon as you get into the real world. Did you have one moment with Barry and the team where you sat down and you said, we're definitely not going to take this offer, we're going to do it ourselves?
Yeah, and we did, and then I had to make the phone call, and it was horrible.
Really?
yeah, because you know, people wanted this film, they wanted it, and it was like the phone call finished when we were putting the phone down and being like, oh my God, right, like this is real now. We've just turned that money down.
And how did it feel to turn down what I'd imagine is a 7-figure offer of money for your business, guaranteed money, and knowing that you were ruining that person's day at the same time?
It wasn't. It was interesting. It was interesting. I was exhausted at the end of it. It was one of those. One of those calls that it all feels a little bit surreal, to be honest with you. It feels like you're looking down from the top of the room at what's going on moments. But no, it was great as well though, because and I think it's interesting hearing you say the rules of the industry, and that's what we think the rules of the industry are. But every time I have conversations with someone, I'm waiting for them to go, oh, it's not like that. But every time I speak to someone, it's the same story. It's like you're a producer, you gratefully take the money, you back out the room bowing thankfully, and then if this film becomes a major hit, then it allows you to make other films, and you're like, well, that's mad.
So how did you get it sold? Because all of a sudden now you've got this hot property that everybody wants. What do you do?
Well, that's where we partner with amazing agents who help us and help have the right conversations, and then we try and find the best partner. And again, it's not just about money. It's about how do we get this to the most people? How do we get this to the best audience? And so there was a few offers that came in, and Netflix, obviously, where we ended up going, came in, and they wanted to come in and open the edit again and feed in their notes, which they did. Mm-hmm. And so they really shaped it really strongly, and it helped the film. It elevated the film, because it's in their interest for the film to land and be as successful as it can be.
Maybe I shouldn't be surprised that Noah Media, which was developing technology to use the data from the film market to best predict the commercial success of their films, has their very own big swinging documentary, 14 Peaks, Nothing is Impossible, bought by Netflix, the streamer who pioneered using data as part of their own creative process.
What's been the consequences of 14 Peaks, Nothing's Impossible for you, John, and for Noah? You took that huge swing. You actually, took the nice game theory and actually threw it out on the pitch. You did it, right? So, how's that left Noah now?
I mean, it's been amazing. So we are in a position now where we're having conversations with all the global platforms on films, on series. We've got 4 feature documentaries in production. We've got 7 TV docs in production. Still doing our work with the federations and growing in a really good way. There's quite a lot that's not been announced yet, so watch this space. But there's a few films that are going to hopefully be equally big, equally global in the next 12 months that will be landing. And then we've got a mountain of amazing ideas and really good access coming through the pipeline, which is great. But on the distribution side, we took investment last year to build and actually make some of the thinking and the decision making that we took on 14 Peaks, actually apply data to this and actually turn this into something that's real and something that is essentially software that we can run across all of our films and all of our ideas. So every idea that we have, we are assessing the audience, assessing the potential, it's helping us set budget levels, it's helping us say no to ideas. It's helping us really refine what we're going with and who we're going to, which is fantastic. And the idea is relatively soon, we'd like to try and make that available to help other producers in this world where they don't necessarily have this on their side of the table.
The victories that John and his partners Barry and Gabriel at Noah Media have achieved already are so inspiring, and I can't help feeling that it's just the beginning of their success. But before we hear from John which of his big swings he thought was the very most impactful, I wanted to give you the heads up on next week's episode. Debs Patterson is a multi-award-winning drama director who's overcome an appalling near-death experience to become a lauded creative force. She recently directed Disney Plus's brand new box set original of the legendary Willow saga. Debs' story of positivity and perseverance as a female director, despite huge challenges, offers us a remarkable insight into just what it takes to be successful at the very pinnacle of entertainment. Now, back to John. Which of his big swings did he feel was the one that made all the difference? Was it number one, taking the top job at BT Sport to direct their coverage of the English Premier League? Or number two, taking a back seat from directing and setting up his very own production company, Noah Media? Or number three, was it taking on an outside project on 14 Peaks Nothing is Impossible on the promise of an untested production and sales strategy and fronting up the money to pay for production?
Do you know, honestly, I think it's probably the first one. I think it's getting it wrong. I think having tasted that, having gone, like, I knew it wasn't right, and I did it anyway. And I think that's the thing now that comes back. And I said about the decision we made on 14 Peaks. You know, there's conversations going on. Is this right? Is this really what we want to? Is this really the right thing for us? And I think that's, you know, the lessons learned in doing what people think you should do. People think you should take the money. Of course you take the money. That's what people do. I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's been the biggest learning for me personally.
Well, I think you're a big man, John, to be brave enough to admit that making a wrong move was in the end, the best decision that you've made. So thank you so much for being so honest about it. And we'd love to get you back on the podcast in a year or two, because it sounds like, you know, these swings are just a warm-up, really, for what you guys are doing.
I hope so, Sam. Hope so.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's great, really great to chat to you. Really enjoyed it.
So that was my conversation with John McKenna, the CEO and co-founder of Noah Media. What a brilliant business they're building over there. Their films are fantastic. If you're a sports fan, please go and check them out. You won't be disappointed. Brilliant investment of your time. And I took 3 major lessons from my conversation with John. Number 1, if you're not winning, you're learning. They had a terrible time when their McQueen documentary got great critical acclaim at the 2015 Cannes Film Festival, but then didn't sell. That was really painful for the team, who wanted a big commercial success to go with all the kudos they were receiving. But having made that error, having had to deal with that, John and the team at Noah didn't make the same mistake twice. They learned from that mistake. Number 2, the business model didn't work for them. And if your business model doesn't serve you, you have to be brave enough to disrupt it. And John and the team were brave enough to do that. They decided that instead of being commissioned to make these big, exciting feature documentaries, they would find alternative ways to fund it, and then they would take their films to market as finished entities and sell them to the highest bidder with help from a sales agency. That takes great guts and determination, and I think that what they've done there to disrupt their own industry of feature documentaries and to take big steps towards self-determination is fantastic and inspirational. Number 3 is John didn't just blindly roll into that. He went out and tested the market. He went out and called up all the streamers that might want to buy 14 Peaks and saw if there was interest. And once he realised that everybody wanted his film, then he was in a brilliant position, having evaluated the demand, to be brave enough to go out and finance it a different way. Of course, that's really tricky with the clients who've told you they want it, because they can't have it straight away. But it gave the team at Noah an opportunity to take that big first step into the unknown and to back themselves. And of course, they did far better financially by funding the film themselves and then selling it to these very excited streamers for the highest bid.
than they would have done if they'd just taken that initial offer of a bit of money up front and a full budget commission. So fortune favours the brave, everybody. Don't forget it. But remember, along the way, learn the lessons and do your disruption carefully. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. The Big Swing podcast is produced in association with the amazing Spirit Studios. Our executive producer is Fred Casella. Our sound designer is Will Horrocks. And The Big Swing was created by me, Sam Barcroft.